their presentation.
So,
recording.
Welcome everybody. We're going to start in with our 9:30 presentation from Francois Perus. It's really very kind of Francois to take the time. He sat through our club meeting, got to listen to the elections, and that's kind of boring. We're really looking forward to hearing about his design work. Francois was a naval architect. He's worked with Tony Granger, Corsair. He's doing some of the most interesting, kind of crossover racing, cruising, multi-hull design around right now. And in particular, it came to my attention that he'd been the designer for the new Corsair boats, which look quite different from the boats that Corsair had been designing through Farrier for all these years. So I was very interested to hear his thoughts on what a 21st century folding trimaran should look like. And if you look at his design portfolio, there's some really gorgeous boats there. So without any further discussion, Francois, why don't you take it over? We're gonna let people ask questions as you go. And it would also be nice if you put questions in the chat box, and Diane will make sure that we get those questions addressed. So Francois, would you like to take over?
Okay, well, thanks for the kind words, Vince. Hello to everyone. I hope you can hear me well, and that my English will be up to the task of this meeting. If you don't understand something, or if I'm not clear, don't hesitate to let me know. It's not a problem, of course. I will start. I will just introduce myself and my company, and then give a few words on the 880 just to start the talk, and you can just throw away your questions, and we can exchange on multi-hulls, boat design, whatever sailing you want to talk about. All right, so let me share my screen.
Greg Jacobs asked, is there a link to your portfolio? Up at the top of the chat, we do have a link to your website, Francois. Is your portfolio there, or is that somewhere else?
Portfolio as a sum up PDF document is not there, but you will see all the project that I'm gonna quickly show you. If you want to look at the website in the same time, or if what I'm showing is enough, and you have question on any kind of design, we can talk about also the other boat, not only the Corsair, of course. So yeah, I'll let you decide. So our company is a Yacht Design Collective. It's a company that I founded with Romain Scolari, who could not be there tonight, unfortunately. So it will be just me alone. We are both engineers from an engineering school in France. And after that, we did another degree in design to get more comfortable with design softwares and all the aspects that come into the conception of a boat, like ergonomy and liveaboard, etc. Like Vince said, then I went to work with Tony Granger in Australia, and it was a big influence on my design work, and definitely also by the philosophy of the boat there. In France, when I grew up, I was sailing mostly monohulls, and the multi-hulls back in the, let's say, the 90s, they were mostly, whether it was like a floating caravan, like a lagoon, or it was a 60-footer or my Trimaran. So it was kind of two extremes in France, at least. And when I went to Australia, I discovered that there was a middle way, and there was something very interesting to do with multi-hulls, because you can have some comfort, you can have some speed, So you can have some really interesting parameters to make a boat and to do some real sailing boat with a good accommodation and a good comfort to live aboard at sea. I guess it's not for nothing that so many people go sailing around the world on a multi-hull. So that's why I decided to focus on the multi-hulls. And after I left Tony, I designed my own catamaran, which is called Pandora 850. And I built it myself with a carpenter in Turkey. And after that, I put it in a container back to Brittany, where I have a family house. And since then, for 7 years, or 6 years, we've been sailing with this cat. And it was a really good opportunity for me to try to push my intuition and beliefs in terms of hull design and multi-hull philosophy. And it gave me the opportunity then to start working first with Slider, for which I designed the Slider 47. And after that, Corsair, and we started with the Pulse 600, our first Trimaran design. We put a lot of brainstorming in this boat. I was also, of course, influenced by all the design work I did on Trimarans with Tony back in Australia and in Thailand. And this boat was a real success in terms of sailing abilities and sensation on board. So we kept on going with Corsair. We designed the 760. Well, we redesigned the 760. We just did the new floats and new beams on the same main hull. And finally, the Corsair 880, for which your club contacted me originally. So this is our last design for Corsair. In between those projects, we did some other catamarans like the ITA 1499 or the VCAT 44. I'm building for myself at the moment this little plywood trimaran. So I think it's really funny to jungle between two such different boats and try to bring design for everyone. So that's a little presentation about us. Let's start with the 880. I opened, give me a minute.
Francois, are you going to offer that small boat as a kit or plans to the public?
Yeah, definitely. We plan to sell the boat ready to sail with different boat builders in the world. Also to sell kits and to sell plans. So at the moment, the carpenter I'm working with in France is finishing the prototype, and then he has two boats to build. So I'm not sure we'll be ready to do kits very quickly, but plans will be available very, very soon. I already started with some guys around the world. Actually, I'm talking with someone in British Columbia at the moment. But the plans are, it's kind of a side project for us. So I can build a proper booklet with all the details and step-by-step drawings. So at the moment, I'm just talking with a few guys that are motivated and have the ability to open the cutting files and the 3D model. So they will basically handle the build like they want, I'd say. I don't know if you see what I mean, but I'm not selling anything. I'm just giving them the opportunity to do it, but they don't have much instructions, let's say. So I hope that soon we'll be able to have some proper documentation so anyone can build it. But at the moment, we are not ready.
Thanks.
But if one of you wants to tackle the build, just let me know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's start with the Corsair 880. Do you see my screen? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, very interesting.
So here, I don't know if you can see properly.
This is great.
So the Corsair 880 was definitely the most difficult design we did for Corsair because all the design parameters, or the main design parameters and the main wishes of the brief goes all in conflict together. You're on a roomy boat. You want good hull shape, but you need to fold in 2.5 meter wide. You need to be able to put it on a trailer and be under a certain amount of weight, especially for Europe and Australia. You want a powerful boat, but you need to keep the mast weight reasonable because you want to be able to put it on your trailer and put it in the water yourself. You want big float, but you need to be able to fold easily. So it's really, really a difficult brief. And you can see on this superposition, okay, so quickly we can quickly see that the mast is more aft than on the 28. We have a more powerful rig, but we are a little bit heavier. We are wider, so we are more powerful. But the main hull, the outline are really, really, really close, because we are in the 2.5 meter width when we fold. So the main hull cannot be much wider. We are just fuller in the back. We have more volume in the back of the boat. And we have more freeboard. You can see on the profile view that we are gaining headroom in the boat. So the boat has a bit more freeboard everywhere and a bigger cabin top, definitely. So in terms of aesthetics, it's two different kind of style, let's say, because one definitely will be a bit more massive because we are creating more volume. We have standing headroom. So the boat's a bit bigger.
Yeah, my question is because on PAX, which is the F-32, it was designed so it could be folded without releasing the cap shrouds. And that's very convenient for folding up.
Yeah, definitely, you're right. On this boat, we could not because we are wider. So the trick that Corsair did is that they installed a lever in the shrouds. So you just have one kind of handle that you open and it gives 10 more centimeters or so. And then you can fold without touching the lashing.
Yeah, we call those high field levers, I think.
High field levers, yeah, that's right.
I notice, who is next, Diane?
Yeah. Gary said he thought it was high field levers, and then Bill has a question about the inverted bows.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the bows, they're shorter on deck than at the waterline, and is that you see that a lot, especially in the really big, Orma trimarans. Is that done for? Are there sort of engineering or hydrodynamic reasons, or is it just because it looks cool?
Yeah. Well, I think on some boats it's because it looks cool, but basically, no. There is an interest, but it's only interesting if it's extra on the length of the boat, let's say. That's why the masts are more aft, etc. Because basically, yes, you will have less volume on top. So if this extra length of hull with the reverse bow is forward of the bow and is not sensitive to too much pitching, then it's very interesting because you just cut through the waves. You still generate lift at the bottom and you keep on going without losing your speed. But if the volume on the deck is too much forward, then it doesn't work because it's gonna stop your boat when you hit the waves.
Spray.
Oh, sorry.
So
what about spray?
Sorry? Yeah, generally it sprays. So you have two possibilities. Me on my boat, for example, I only have sprays on the leeward hull. So with the wind, it just passes above the hull and nothing's wet. But if your boat stays with the two bows in the water, you can have spray on the front, and then you can integrate shines in the design, for example. That's what we do on power boats. If you put a shine, then the water that's going up will be stopped and will be sent back to the water. That's what you see on power boats.
I have a question on did I hear you say right that the floats are 300% or 3 times the displacement?
No, it was 3 times the volume of the old boat.
3 times the volume of the 28. Holy Moses. So is this, would you anticipate that this boat would fly the center hull?
Well, it's designed to just, so the main hull just kiss the waterline.
At what point, at what wind speed, I don't know if we're talking about the R version or the short mast version, but at what point would you, in wind speed, would you expect to really see that center hull kind of lift quite a bit?
Well, it doesn't come so quickly because the boat still has some displacement. So, and the main hull is narrow, so the draft is not so shallow. But I don't know. I didn't sail the boat myself, unfortunately, because of the COVID. But basically, what they observed is on a side wind with the Gennaker on. In 15 knots of wind, they're gonna go 17, and they're gonna start to be just with the main hull kissing.
Now, 15 knots with a full Gennaker on a reach, that's a lot of power.
Yeah. They hit 20 knots, but they were never in a situation where the main hull feels like it's getting out of the comfort zone. So I know that the first, when we started designing those floats for the Pulse, Corsair were a bit scared that we lose the Fourier effect with the float diving in the water and giving you some kind of information of where you are with the power. But those big volume floats, the idea was that basically when you have a gust, instead of heeling and driving down your speed, you just keep on gliding and you accelerate to dissipate this power. So, and in practical life, yeah, it worked even better, I'd say, because we were expecting that at some point, you reach if you heel too much, you reach a certain angle that on a multi-hulls, you are unstable and you will capsize. But those boats, they try to capsize them, they never succeed. So the behavior is very, very healthy. The boat just accelerates because we have quite full section, it creates a lift. And you are able to support gusts that in a comfortable way without having the potentiality of stopping your boat and flipping through the front, pitch bowling. Sorry.
But if you're going upwind, accelerating would increase the apparent wind, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is. It does all the time, actually, especially if you are really downwind. But yes, you have more wind, yes. But I mean, everything, you have some safety factor and so on. And if you go upwind, the acceleration are way less than if you're going on a side wind, for example. So when you go upwind, you will reach a top speed of 10, 11, 12 knots, but you will not go further than this, even if you have more wind. So that's pretty safe.
Yeah, Francois, you mentioned that they tried to, I don't know, capsize it. What wind speeds were they sailing when they tried to do that?
I don't know, to be honest, but I hope some guys are sufficiently angry when they are sailing and they push the boat. But I had the reporting from the guys in Hawaii. They were in big swell and they hit 26. They were sustaining 25, 26 knots of speed. So wow. I don't know what kind of wind they had, but it was blowing on the video, actually.
Awesome. So can we see those videos somewhere?
Yeah, probably, yeah. I can try to find them.
Do you have them on your site, or are they on YouTube, or what?
Well, I think I have them on my computer, and I have the speed reporting as well.
Can we see them?
Sorry, I have plenty of shit in there.
or maybe you can have a link or something, or
yeah, you don't have to put them up now.
Greg Jacobs has a question about the bows. You want to ask it, Greg, or should I just read it from the chat?
Hey, go ahead and read it. It's not too technical. I was just wondering if the bows, particularly on the AMAs, are sacrificial. We live up here in the Northwest where trees like to float around for hours and days and years. Mm-hmm. And recently, many shipping containers were lost off a container ship off of Japan, and they will eventually, some will work their way here. So we're worried about hitting things and causing damage or pitch poling after you hit something that doesn't move.
Yeah, I'm just checking on the 880. The first watertight bulkhead is like 1.5 meter from the front. So you have a space at the front that is fully isolated with the rest of the float.
And does the laminate go all the way forward, or is there kind of a step in the laminations so it's actually designed to come off at a certain point?
No, it's all together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Greg K has a question about the righting moment and float rudders. Greg K, do you want to ask? How does the righting moment compare between 880 and Corsair F28? And he asked, any ideas of float rudders?
Any idea of float rudders? Well, for the float rudders, it's just a choice of simplicity, and also the fact that we designed the boat so it's not really made to sail on a float, on just one float with the mainhull far away from the water. So the rudder is quite deep. They didn't have any rudder control issue as far as I know. And if you put rudders on the float, you need to also create a system that you will dislinked when you fold, for example. So on those folding trimarans, it can probably be made as custom, but for Corsair, I think it's too much of a hassle to do that at the factory. And as the boat, like especially the 880, it's quite a big boat, so it's not designed to sail with the main hull very far away from the water. So it's designed so we are always in control with the main rudder on the main hull. And for writing moment, I need to dig out the info. I probably have it somewhere.
I have a question on terminology. A lot of people say ACA and AMA. Ian Ferrier was very specific that they're called floats and beams. I'm wondering which terms you use.
Well, I know all those terms because I trained with the Australians, with Tony Granger. But yeah, in France, we just say beam and float.
He's multilingual.
Comes from Polynesia, no, or Hawaii language, or
Polynesia.
Polynesia, yeah. But yeah, no, in France, most of people, I think they don't even know these names.
So Phil has a question too that he put in the chat.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, most of us are sailing boats designed by Ian Farrier, and he kind of just, started just sort of figuring things, what worked and what broke, because he didn't really have things like FEA. Yeah. And I'm wondering if you do, like, do you do FEA on the structure or on the rig? And if so, were you able to tell, I don't know how much Corsair has changed their layups, but it seems like you could build a lighter boat now because you have a lot more computing power to figure out what's going to break.
Yeah, well, it's true and false. So yes, we do use FEA, and we did use it on Corsair on some particular parts. We save weight compared to the older boats by using carbon instead of glass fiber. But for the rest, well, sorry, yeah, there are a couple of things to talk about actually. So there is the studies, the FAA versus trial and error, and yeah, more computational power, more knowledge of the materials than before, for sure. There are the materials that we have now. So I think the materials we have are also better quality. Probably back in the days when Jan started, to find good fibers and good resin was probably harder. So now we have materials that we know the characteristic, and we can rely on the calculation. That's right. However, there are two difficulties, or three difficulties. The norms. The norms push us to use some minimal thickness fibers, for example, for the main skins. And we had the issue with Corsair. I'm gonna give you an example. The norms, we had to put a 600 gram, and Corsair, they told us, that we are using 500 gram for 30 years. So we talked with the certification company, and because of the history of Corsair, they accept to downsize the minimal thickness. But if you were a new yard, you will have to comply, and directly you take 100 gram plus the resin per square meter, just because the ISO rules takes more safety than we think is necessary, let's say. So that's one point. Second point is the workforce putting together composite. Composite is very sensitive to direction of fibers, the way you put the fibers, to keep up with the property of the final product. So you have to take some safety into your conception. You are not going to design, or you're not going to do the same lamination scantling if you are doing a boat in pre-preg carbon with multiplast, or if you are going to do production boats infused like Corsair, who have a lot of boat to produce. So you need to take that into account when you design and calculate. And the third, what did I add in mind? Yeah, and the third is, what do you use to do your calculation? What loads? How do the loads arrive on the boat? How do you simulate what's happening on the sea? And to be honest, this is pretty difficult as well. So you can see that when you take a young guy, and like I was when I started, you calculate something and you're pretty sure that it's like this, the calculation tell me so. And then you have an old guy who comes behind Lou, have a look and say, dude, you need to put some fiber in this direction here for sure. You're like, why? No, because it's no, do it. And experience very often is right. So yeah, it's a very tricky.
So can I ask a follow-on question to Bill's question?
Yeah.
I mean, the boat's 1,000 pounds heavier. So where's that weight distributed? I'm guessing it's probably out in the floats. You put up a bigger sail, so you got a larger, you got more horsepower. So sail area to displacement, how does that compare? But essentially, where'd that extra 1,000 pounds end up? And then did you put up enough horsepower to offset that?
Yeah, so we have the same power. I have it somewhere. I think it's even on the website of Corsair when they did the presentation last year. But yeah, the extra weight comes mainly with a bit more square meter of composite, definitely.
So it's on the floats or it's on the main hull, or? Yeah,
a little bit on the float, a little bit on the main hull, because the main hull is overall, it's not wider, but it's higher, etc. The accommodation, because you have some liners inside, you have more systems, so you have more batteries, more cable, etc.
And then you're saying you put up enough sail power to basically make the ratio approximately the same?
Yeah, and it seems that the boat is faster.
Let me jump in for a second. Todd, I went down and looked at the 880 in the water here at Schilschel, and I was fascinated to see the overlay of the 880 over the 28, because it doesn't, in the overlay, they look kind of comparable. In the flesh, the 880 looks much larger, much larger. It's a much more substantial boat. So in every dimension, so it's taller, it's wider, it's just a brawny looking thing in comparison.
I can imagine those bigger floats, you were talking to me, when you get into chop is probably where that would be, feel pretty good, compared to the 28 or the 27, where you all of a sudden you get in a big wind and chop, and all of a sudden next thing you know, you got a float underwater.
But for sure, it's a bigger boat than the 28. Huh?
Yeah.
It's, the volume of the main hull is comparable to the cruise.
So it's really a 31, but a little shorter and wider.
Shorter 31 compared to a build-up 28, yeah.
I'll bet the width on this thing, on the 880, is as wide as the 31, yeah? Or even wider?
No, I think it's the same, because like I said, we are quite blocked in the design of the main hull, right. So the width didn't change much. You have more volume because it's bigger, higher. So especially in the kitchen and saloon area, but I think the width of the beds are probably similar.
So Vince, I guess to your point, I mean, if it's a bigger boat, that's where 1,000 pounds goes.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think there would still be room to do to use the same philosophy in a smaller boat. So you have something that's lighter, easier to trailer, easier to put the mast up and so on. Huh? Because for sure it's the maximum size, you can do everything by hand. After that, it's gonna be complicated.
We have a question about beam design.
Yeah, it's a heavy boat, but what everybody tried it, they say it glides, it really glides. So this is kind of our philosophy with most of our design, also because of we were lucky to have an interesting brief. I mean, I like to do real sailing boats. Performance and speed is not, I mean, it's fun, of course, but it's not just a reason by itself. But when you design a multi-hull as a good sailing boat, you are really quickly in a virtuous cycle and performance comes naturally. So this 880, some of the old guys at Corsair, they were a little bit worried that because it's a bigger boat, you have more windage, you have more weight and so on. They were a bit worried about the sensation and the feeling when you sail. But in the end, they were really impressed by the behavior of the boat, the way it accelerates, and the way it's comfortable that it accelerates. So it's fast, but it's not just speed for itself. It's kind of everything goes together. You reduce pitching, so it's more comfortable, and you improve speed. You reduce wave resistance, so it's smoother when you sail. It's all together like this, so it's a good result.
Talk to me about the rocker in the hull, in the floats and in the main hull. It looks like, I don't know if you could put that picture back up of the plan of the profile, but it looks like there's a little bit less rocker. I mean, one of the things that has always been the case in the Farrier boats is that you get a kind of a pronounced aft rocker.
Yeah.
And did you change that? I mean, if you zoom in on that, yeah, it looks like the angle of the rocker is less.
Yeah, it's less, yeah. This boat is maybe not the best example because we are very contained by this folding thing to design the hull. So if I would not have this constraint, probably the hull would be a little bit different. She would be probably wider, for example. And if it's wider, then she would have less draft. And less draft means less rocker again.
Ah.
The rocker thing is a very important parameter because you have this law called Bernoulli law. And basically, the more rocker you have, the more suction you are creating under your boat. So it's like if you look at the old displacement mono hull, full speed on the America's Cup, they have this big wave at the front, the big wave at the back. They are stuck in between those two waves and they cannot go faster. So when you play with the rocker and the sections of the boat, you can really push forward your wave resistance and your max speed, your theoretical max speed. And then with the section, if you're flat enough, then you start to glide and you can really accelerate far away, like Pulse 600, 6 meter long, that can hit and sustain speed above 25 knots. That's pretty cool.
So it looks like, am I seeing this correctly, that the transom is designed to be immersed at rest?
But it's also because we need some volume, and it's also because very quickly the main hull of the Trimaran will be partially sustained by the floats. So you come back to a transom that is at the waterline. It's good to have a slightly immersed transom because it creates a virtual waterline that is longer on your boat. This was done on the monohull, racing monohull as well. But you have to be careful because it also adds drag when at low speed. So you need to find the good balance between light wind performance and heavy wind performance, basically. Yeah.
So basically, in the light wind, you just take your 220-pound crew member and you send him and put him on the bow. Problem solved. Yeah,
that's what you can do on a small boat. Yeah, but because you cannot have everything for sure. So that's what I do on my cat as well. But if you are on a 15-meter cruising catamaran, you need to find a trim that fits for various conditions.
I'd like to catch up with some of the chat questions. We got 4 or 5. Yeah, the beam design question, I don't know if we could finish that one. They asked, is it higher off the water?
I think the beam so much.
Definitely way higher. And also because here we are just looking at the boat on a static position, but because of the float volume, the old 28 will heal way more because you will quickly dive your beams, your floats, sorry. So your beams will be closer to the water as well, and your cockpit is way wetter. This is a way drier boat for sure.
Yeah, the folding struts must be a foot higher. God, that's amazing.
And this is the cruise.
Oh, look at that, huh?
So you can see the outline of the cabin top is the same altitude.
Mm-hmm.
And they have more length at the back. But for the rest, it's same kind of volume as the cruise.
And same mast height, huh? Is that the R version, or the tall mast version, or the regular?
That's the regular, I think.
Hmm. Do you have a view that we can look straight on, so we can look at the cross section of the?
Are you looking for it to be compared to 28?
This is the cruise. The float of the cruise are already, they have the same kind of volume.
Yeah.
I mean, they have the same kind of master section. The volume is less because they're gonna be finer at the back where we are way fuller. But in terms of section, it's Farrier was not a bad guy, yeah? So it's optimized to have the three section folded.
Right.
So that's why we arrive to the same kind of master section.
So that's the cruise, okay.
You can only see the top view.
That's relative to the cruise again?
That's the 28.
Okay.
So you have the float in gray behind.
Yeah.
Wow.
Boy, that's something.
Yeah.
Huh.
I'd say one of my favorite things so far are the floats on this boat. I mean, the floats and the fact that they've done what some home builders have already done, and that's raised the cockpit up a little bit. It seems like that cockpit sole is higher, which I think, helps you look over the top. I mean, I do notice in my boat, I sit on a cushion. It's no big deal. I know Bill Quigley on his boat, he modified that so his seats are a little higher. But that also gives you the room in the back for that aft cabin, which is kind of nice. It looks like an aft cockpit, but my understanding, Francois, is that you also have an aft cabin in this, right?
Yeah, you have a cabin below the cockpit.
Where do you the helm seat here on this thing on the 880 is really pretty sweet because you got everything, the tiller, the main sheet, kind of right there. But I was looking at it on the water. It seemed like it might be a little difficult to get the tiller extension out to if you're sitting on the aft beam, yeah, or out on the back on the corner where the float meets the beam, out the outer corner there. That's where I typically sit. I haven't seen any pictures of people sitting out there. Can you helm the boat easily from the nets?
I think if you have a long enough tiller, yes, you can. Huh?
Yeah. Okay.
But to be honest, I never step on the boat. So
yeah. This must be frustrating to have such a nice boat and not be able to sail it yet.
Yeah, and I was in Vietnam. I mean, days before launch, basically.
Did you? Are there any 880s coming to France?
There is one coming. I think they will try to send there, so we have it for next season. Yeah.
I believe it's hull number 5 that's going to be heading your way to France.
Okay, so it should
Scott, you need to get Francois here. Really, is what you need to do.
Well, you missed that actually. I told him to come in around 2022 when I have one of every single boat he designed. We'll be sitting out here in Seattle.
Hell, man, we got $8,000 in our kitty. We should fly his ass out here.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to back up to a chat question. So what material is used in the main hull windows just above the waterline near the bow?
I believe it is glass.
Okay.
It's glued glass. It's a safety escape hatch that we had to put in to be ISO certified.
Okay.
So you have a small hammer, like in a bus, and you can break the glass if you capsize.
Okay.
I have to say, I looked at that hatch. That is really well integrated, and must be an amazingly cool view when you're sailing.
Yeah, that's what Sierra and Billy say there.
Scott, put the arm on Vince and he'll buy one, I'm sure.
No, man.
Come on.
Well, just so you do know, I do have one on order right now. It doesn't belong to anyone, but it will be delivering in November of 2021. So still is waiting to be spec'd out.
So I had a question about the rudder and the digger board.
Yes.
Specifically talking about the aspect ratio of it. Ian Ferrier went to, right after I built my own rudder and digger board, he went to a higher aspect ratio on both the rudder and the digger board. And I know Vince has built himself one of the newer ones for the digger board. I'm not sure about his rudder. But I was curious, it doesn't look like it's a real high aspect ratio there. At the same point, the question, I don't know, Ian Ferrier had developed a way to make the rudder with a one injection process. So it was one instead of a two halves laminated together, it was just a total injection. And his rudders were weighing in the neighborhood of 25 pounds or so. I was curious about your rudder and digger board.
Well, we don't see on this drawing the 880 rudder. I will share the other screen.
You know, I have some photos of those.
So we have pretty high aspect ratio rudder, especially.
Right. That's good.
We don't want to lose control when the main hull is skimming. For the dagger, I don't know. I didn't compare with his work. For the construction, they are building them in a classical way with the two halves, and we have carbon stringers in the middle. I know the process with with a continuous skin and infuse it in one go, but it's not up to me, unfortunately, to decide on the process.
Francois, was the pitch or the angle of the center board, is that mostly related to trying to get it so you can raise the dagger board? I mean, I know you moved it pretty far aft, and on this drawing, it looks like, you know, it looks like the desire was to get the center board back a little more. Did you indeed angle it so it still would pull up, or?
Well, we had two constraints. One is that we need the boat to be balanced and to have the center of effect of the board at the right place. And the second constraint that Corsair gave us is that they wanted to be able to take off the dagger board without having to step off the mast. So that's why the board has a lot of angle like this.
You think that would be better for hitting objects, floating objects like logs and things?
Well, the more angle, I guess, the less loads you're gonna generate. Yes, potentially.
I think if you're going fast enough, you're gonna snap it off anyway.
Yeah,
Eric.
No.
What we do on cats, and I don't know if they did it, to be honest, on the IID, but we glass a piece of titanium or stainless steel rod just at the back of the case with some unidirectional fiber straps. So if you hit something, instead of having the board cutting the boat, you have this piece of rod cutting the board.
Interesting.
That's a good system.
Yeah, that's a good plan.
Yeah, I really love being able to remove the dagger board without unstepping the mast, because you know you can get it out, you need to be able to clean it and repaint it and stuff. Yeah, if you keep your boat in the water, that's huge.
And it's a short dagger board. I mean, like when you have the mast above. Sorry.
Well, Gary has a question about safety, and he's comparing different boats. Gary, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, this is more just touching on what you commented on earlier about the art versus the science of design. And you can simulate certain things in the computer, but there's so many dynamic loads. Like how much of a design is really computer aided versus intuition when you're designing a boat like this?
To be honest, I could not say. Some things you have some intuition, or you have things that you want to try, or you also rarely go from a blank page. You take something that you already designed and you make it evolve. And then it depends on the project and if the client is ready to pay. It's I can do anything. Show me the money. Because,
it's sort of like coming back to one of your comments. You said, you know, hey, we designed it in the computer this way, and then the old experienced designer came along and says we need to beef up these parts based on experience.
Yeah.
And so I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an example that would need to be balanced by the kind of issue it generates. When you're very inexperienced, sometimes you just don't see how the load would go. Sometimes you know how the load is going, but still the guy with experience will save you. That's right. But then the power of the tools depends on how far you want to go in the study. If you have 2 months of CFD available to run hulls, it's fantastic. If we do FAA, for example, on small parts, but we don't have the capacity in the office to do a full FAA on a boat with all the layers, all the patches, and so on. And to be honest, it's not our specialty, and I don't think it's our forte. Our job is to keep consistency in a design and make sure that the brief is respected. But when I have to do something really precise and optimized in terms of lamination, I work with a specialized office. I think it's better for the client and better for myself as well. So for some projects, we are working with an office in France, and they put every layers of every fiber, and they can simulate it with a lot of accuracy, but it's a lot of money. So it's not necessarily adapted to a project. When you have the norms that are forcing you to put such amount of materials anyway, the client doesn't want to pay for extra study to tell him the norm is wrong, but you cannot do it anyway. So
when you say norm, Francois, are you speaking? Is that a legally? You're talking about some kind of a regulation, a legally binding regulation, norm? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to insure your boat, if you want to have your, category of navigation and so on, the boat needs to be certified.
And so it sounds like you really couldn't, reduce the safety factors by much, like given that you designed it to 600 and Corsair has been building to 500 anyways. And so really it sounded to me like you're building more to the design brief and you weren't able to reduce the weight based on the computational power. I guess that's kind of the punchline here.
No, it's true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of it's a good summary, but it's you can't leave it just to the art versus the technique. Well, in a way you're right. I mean, it's the art to listen to the experience, but every boat is different and unique because also of your clients. So Corsair has such an experience in trimarans. We need to update the scantling because of the extra loads of the bigger float, for example, or because the boat is overly overall heavier, sorry. So this will increase the loads. So we cannot just copy and paste what they did before. We need to make sure that the difference in the design are not creating new stresses, but they have such experience for sure. We need to study what they did and use this to produce the best boat as possible.
Bill Quigley has built a trimaran, and he has some comments about the hull strength, I think. Bill, do you want to talk about that?
Gone.
Okay. Yeah, he typed something in chat about 600 grams per square meter is equivalent.
Yeah,
to... Oh, there you are.
So I'm sorry, I was double muted. I was just saying, Francois, we have to change everything to our antiquated system. So 600 grams per meter for us is 18 ounces per square yard, which is the same. That's the same as the base layup on a Farrier Trimaran. It's double that below the water line. So the outside skin on the hull, and I think he does like 400 gram on the inside skin, 600 on the outside.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Kind of numbers for a boat of this size, let's say.
To touch in a little bit, just because I have a bit more on the insider of during the testing in the initial manufacture of the 880, with the, not only was there a tremendous amount of the CFDs or the computerized fluid dynamics tests that were done during the, when Francois was working amongst the boat, but most of the materials, I'm sure, as Francois recalls seeing, from the AMA arms to the new mast design and even the coach roof design, they went through the DNR stress testing as well. And everything from X-ray models, core samplings, to even stress testing on trying to see what amount of force would be needed to snap rudders or to snap AMA arms. So all of that was done isolated at the factory prior to the first model being released. It's quite a fun department, actually.
Get to break things.
You get to see how much it takes, because inevitably, there's a lot of questions out there on how safe can a boat be built. But in the true reality, a good race boat, a really good race boat, was designed to be able to do that entire race. And then the moment it lands at the finish line, it basically falls apart. If you could do that, then you didn't overbuild it, you didn't underbuild it, you built it perfectly. Now, when you're trying to build a boat over towards more of the general public, but also on a performance element, you do want to try to keep them safe, but everything is going to have a stress. And without trying to excessively overbuild the boat, you still want to be able to create a safe model. So fortunately, because of the history with Corsair, they do have access to, again and again, what has worked and what has not. And there's really no computer system that could replace that recipe for experience. So, yeah.
Question for Francois. Tell us a little bit about Granger's latest try. Were you involved at all in the design of, I think it's called Airplay or something like that?
No. I left already, Tony, back that time.
So Francois, if I can just ask, I mean,
Airplay was first Corsair, and then they, I think they didn't decide, and but they didn't complete the design with Tony, and then he went to another client because they were not sure to keep on going or something like this.
So Francois, I'm a little curious. This is kind of going back to the overall approach. I know that as a designer, you probably got a phone call. They probably said, here's what we want to do. Here's the design that we have. These are the things that we want to change. You always get that from the owner in the design brief, essentially. So, but I'm kind of curious, when you took a look at the boat and you took a look at the design brief, what were your initial thoughts about what you thought you wanted to change on the boat?
Do you mean right now?
No. As you were designing this new version.
Okay.
That would be good to know too.
The old 28, you mean the previous 28, 31?
Right. Yeah. So you're sitting there in your office. You don't know Corsair. Corsair calls you. They show you what they want to do. You sign the contract. Sure, that's all great. And I think any designer, after they get the brief and they sit down and they look at what the client wants, and you always take what you think, and you always have that you overlay on top of their desire. So I'm a little curious, when you took a look at the original 2028 in the design brief, what things you thought that should be changed?
Francois did also build the 760 and the Pulse 600.
Yeah, and the Pulse is awesome. I like all his work so far. But, you know, I just know that, you know, as an architect, you know, I always have, you know, someone shows me something, I always have, you know, my own opinions about, you know, what needs to be done.
We call that the first reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, first reaction can be on the aesthetics, can be on technicals aspect. I mean,
what were yours?
Maybe it's gonna be, but the first thing I do, to be honest, what I try to do is this boat is not for me. The boat I'm designing is not for me. The boat that I'm designing is for the client. So I don't want to push my ego to do something that I want to do. I want to be sure that I understand what he wants. And I try to look in if there is an history, what's good in this history and how you can keep affiliation. That was a very hard exercise with the Seawind 1370, for example. For the Corsair, it was easier, and to be honest, the design that was created came from the technicality, the float volume, the higher freeboard, and a bit of aesthetics. Of course, I was never a big fan of the roof that disappear in the deck in the front. I preferred when the roof was more separated in the design, but that's a really personal point of view. So I think it was better. I gave the arguments to the client that it's better because it's more in the look of today. But if the boat is a one-off and the guy tells me, I absolutely want my roof like this, find a way to make it sexy enough, let's say, at some point I will do it because I want the client to be happy and try to understand what he wants as well. But yeah, I don't know if this answers your question, but when Corsair approaches us, like Scott was saying, we designed other boats before. So it was in our mind for a long time that we wanted to redesign the 28. So we knew what we wanted to do. So yeah, give it a more aggressive, more modern look. I mean, I love those boats, the 28, but we thought that there was a way to make it a bit sexier and more actual also in terms of design. And this along with the gain in volume of the floats and this kind of new philosophy of multi-hulls that we've been discussing before.
Yeah, I think that was a great answer. And it was, I think, really a good insight into what you have to do as far as honoring, you know, clients' desires and, you know.
Yeah, and general, I mean, if there is things that are really, contradictory in the brief of the client or in his choice and what he wants, you need to of course, try to explain him why it's not possible. But we are lucky because I think as any kind of architect or boat designer or designer, when the client comes to see you, he already has an idea of what you do. So he comes to see you because he likes your style, let's say. So I guess it's easier. If someone, it happened that some clients came to us and we realized after a few meetings that we could not understand each other. So we were not the right people for them. They wanted stuff that was so exotic and strange. I was like, sorry, but I will not be able to answer. And I don't really want to put my name on this, on this crazy idea.
Francois, tell us about a project that you were the client for, the Kenka.
Yeah. So this project, I will share some screen. This is a really fun project. I really like this project because, of course, I love designing beautiful, big catamarans. But when I posted this project for the first time, I had so many people asking me about it that I thought it was very interesting to touch so many people across the world and not just a few millionaires who can afford a big catamaran. So it was, I mean, it's nice to touch more people, I'd say. Let me share the screen. So this is the boat. And so this boat, the brief was that I am half of my time in Brittany, and I have a house by the water, and I have the catamaran that I showed you before. But this catamaran is 8.5 meter long. Sorry, it's always a bit of a logistic, even though it's super simple. When I'm alone, I'm not always taking this boat. There is a lot of currents everywhere. I unfortunately spend more time on my laptop than on the boat. So I wanted to have another boat that was even simpler, that is not worth 150,000 euro. And if you hit something, it's gonna be costly. So, and my final requirement was that I wanted to store it in my garden and carry it on the beach. So that's why I tried to find the smallest size of multi-hull that I can sail 1, 2, 3 people, and that each bit will be less than 40 kilograms. And a little bit of wood, I thought it would be pleasant. So that's why I came up with this idea of this plywood boat in the same size as a Veta, but with all the kind of stuff we like to implement in our boat, like the big float. I play a little bit with this dagger board. It's the advantage of such a boat. Everything is simple. I can fix it myself. So I can play and create a strange dagger board without having to invest in tooling. So the boat will be all in plywood, and the beams are in lamb wood of ashwood with some carbon fiber just below, sorry, just under the last layer of wood, there will be a carbon fiber. So we have a black line, but the rest will be wood finish. I will have the tiller in wood also, and the top of the dagger board, and the bowsprit, which is not shown on this model. So I think it's gonna be nice, kind of modern, but with a little bit of wood and the beams that are a bit like Polynesian trimarans. So that's the idea.
Will you have a...
You're building it now, right? I think I saw a picture of your shop where you're building.
Yeah, it's under built in Brittany, not far from my house. I'm paying a carpenter to put it together, and he will build the next boat. I hope it will be launched at the end of winter, so we have 2.5 more months of bad weather, and then sailing season will start again.
Will you have
is it demountable?
Is it what?
Is it demountable so that you can carry it?
I didn't talk about this. Yeah. So on this boat, we tried to suppress all metal parts. So I think the only thing we are keeping is the gudgeons and the mast base. All the rest is textile or composite. For example, I will show you. I need to stop every time, sorry.
I'm asking about whether it can be taken apart and you can you can take it in pieces down to the water and assemble it.
Yes, you can. Sorry, I was looking for a picture. Can't find it. But yes, it's totally dismountable. It's not foldable, but it's dismountable.
Cool.
And the main attachment are made with NWMA lashing. So we use the fact that the beams are wide. So below you will have a bulkhead, or you have a kind of chain plate built in the wood of the hull. And when you put your lashing, because you have the width, you know, at the end, you put it together to create the tension. So we are copying the old way in Polynesia, but with modern materials.
That's right.
And at the end of the beam, because the outside of the attachment is in compression on the float, we will have some kind of wood part that is fixed on the float, and the beam will slide on top of it with some, like, I don't know you call this in English, but the same way when you build something in wood and you want to lock two pieces of wood together.
Dovetail.
Yeah, dovetail. So there will be a dovetail, and we will slide the beam on the dovetail. And on the other side, because we have some lengths because of the design of the float, we will put this lashing.
This is fantastic. This is it's sort of like James Wareham updated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, trying to do something simple and that anyone can build.
Will you have a furler on the little jib?
You can have one. On the first boat, there will be a furler, yeah. Continuous line in and out jib.
Yeah. Would it be a structural furler? I.e. no forestay, just or maybe one of those Facnor things?
To be honest, I need to check. But I think so, yes. Yeah.
And what about the technology for the appendages? How will you build those, do you think?
I think we will build it in plywood. We will shape the plywood, and on the two outside faces, we will run the machine to make a groove by the thickness of the carbon, and I will laminate carbon fibers unidirectional.
Oh.
That's super cool. And what about the mast? Just a stock aluminum section rotating?
Well, the standard is just aluminum rotating mast, and for my boat, I took a carbon mast made by a rigger in France who has a lot of small profile, and he built me a mast in two pieces without spreader. So to store the boat and transport it, it's gonna be way easier.
Cool.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll post some pictures as
I'm pretty sure that the questions in chat were answered. If someone thinks we missed you, please say so. I don't know if we got to this one, but maybe this is hard to do at the time. And that is, how does the writing moment compare with 880 and the Corsair 28?
Yes, I did the calculation somewhere. I don't know if I'm gonna find it right away. I know the writing moment of the 28.
I want to say that the 31 is 48,000 pounds. I'll bet the 880 is equal or over that by margin.
Yeah, well, to compare the boats, we should compare the maximum theoretical writing moment. But you have to know that then in the design, we don't use this writing moment because on a trimaran, then we would have a too big mast. Because of some factor, you can reduce it, like when you're heeling and so on. So we calculate we choose basically a different writing moment for all the design. On a cruising cat, it's the contrary. We're gonna drop it because you don't want to fly the hull and so on. So on the Corsair 28, we are using 6.5 ton per meter. At 28. I don't know. I need to dig out in the files.
While he's doing that, so Seattle sailors, how much pressure are we putting on our sails in this wind around here?
As much as I can do without sinking afloat.
Well, you're not putting 41,000 pounds on is my point, right?
I don't know, who knows?
That's my point, right? I'm trying to get the practical aspect of this of, I don't have a gauge up there that tells me.
Well, I think the question is the question about riding moment is really about the ultimate power of the boat.
Yeah.
And, the impression I get from looking at it in the flesh is this is a very powerful boat, especially in the tall rig. It's wide, the floats are big.
Right.
It's
so why not put up more horsepower? Put up even a bigger sail.
I swear to God, man, the tall rig on this thing is, make you think twice.
Pretty high,
almost too tall. Yeah, it's almost too tall.
Do we have a boat in Seattle? Does the Seattle boat have the regular rig or the tall rig?
The sport, the tall rig.
The tall rig, yeah. It's
the next one's going to be the regular rig. It's something a tiny bit more manageable.
I just don't have a reference of what 41,000 pounds feels like up in the mast.
Yeah, it's I can't wait to get a chest sail on this 880. I just am fascinated by the different approach. One of the things that is always
I thought you did get on board the 880.
No, it didn't come together. And they've got it now in the yard. In the yard. It's not in the water anymore.
Scott, he's practically selling himself. Come on, get on it.
What are you talking about? Oh, shoot. Hey, you know what? I'll tell you.
Put the hook in.
You already know if you want one or not. I don't need to sell it. I just need to put it together for you.
Need a closer.
So Vince, after you do buy the 880, I want your floats. That's all I ask.
No, you gotta take the whole boat.
we do have another one on. We did place an order just as a dealer stock one that we're going to have next year, November. And just to tell you how deep the build calendar is on this already, we just got hole 1 here in the spring, and this next one that we're going to be receiving is hole number 20. And then after that, there's still another 7 boats that have been sold before the next available. So we have about 27 on order now for this model. But then but then you look at other builds like the 1370 catamaran. That we don't even have the first hole build until October 2021. And there's over 50 on order right now of that boat.
50 now?
50, 50. 51
actually. It looked like another interesting question on chat. It just disappeared. So maybe we should keep for Francois. Maybe we should
one moment there.
We have him.
The diagonal stability from Alec McKenzie.
Yeah, it's kind of the same pitch polling we were talking about before. For me, it's harder, because you don't have this float sinking in and stopping your boat and helping you pitch polling. And it seems that after the modification on the 760, that's also what they experienced. So bigger floats with the right volume repartition, of course, seems to be less likely to pitch pole.
It looks like you reprofiled the tops of the front of the beams or the front of the floats as well. Is that what you mean by repartition?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, where the max volume is, and what is the section, and in the front on the first of the boat, the float, sorry, in the first part, on the first third, let's say, you want the water to get out quickly, but around the front arm, you want to have maximum volume. So it's tricky.
Can I ask a question about repairability of the boats? The design, whatever you did that would make them easier to maintain. I have a 33, and if it ever hit anything sufficient, it would be a complete disaster, and it would be very hard to repair because it's a little airplane.
Yeah. If you want light boats and you're using composites, sandwich will always be a bit fragile. And epoxy boat will be easier to repair, I guess, but I mean, easier. You're gonna have the same damages, but.
Do you have is there a diagonal system like the under net lines?
Well, I think Scott, I think they took it out, yeah?
They did take it out, yeah. We did have that on the cruise, the 970, but on the 880, there's not a diagonal wire set that goes between the floats and the hull.
Why did you take it out?
They took it out.
What?
Why did you take it out? What?
I didn't. The Corsair decided that it wasn't necessary for this boat.
Not on the 27 or the 28, just on the 31, right?
It was only the 31 that had it. Yeah, that's right.
So 27s and 28s don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure why it was implemented on that. And it is also on the 37, but not on the 880 or the 760 or the Pulse.
It's a little bit, again, this thing of art and science. We told Corsair that theoretically this was not needed. They said, no, we always put them, let's put them. Said, okay, let's put them. And after they said, yeah, they are useless, let's take it out.
I always found it as a tremendous pain in the butt anyways, those diagonal cross cables anyways. One of them was always a little bit tighter than the other one. They were constantly being exposed to salt water, concern about rust. And you could feel them on your feet as if your trampoline starts to get loose, something that you can almost trip over. So I'm good riddance.
Yeah, they drag a little bit. I mean, on my boat, they're actually mounted a little lower. And so when you do press the float down, they actually are underwater, a portion of them. So
when you are pressuring the float down, do they tension or they are always loose?
No, they're frankly, the way they're set up is they're under mild, tension even when the boat's at rest. So I haven't really noticed any sagging or anything like that. But what I do notice is that, the previous owner, and for good reason, and I love it, it's the one thing that I don't like about the Dragonfly, is that, when you have the floats out and the wires are deployed, you still have a nice flat trampoline without the wires protruding. So on my boat, they're probably, 4 or 5 inches below. But what that means is they're also 4 or 5 inches, they're a little lower on the side of the float. And so when you press that float to the point where the bottom of the beam is at the water surface, where those wire, there's probably a good, 2.5, 3 feet of that wire that's in the water, at that time. So, my point is you do get a little more drag, from those wires, at least in the way mine's configured. And I would love to get rid of that. But
I think frankly, only if the structure is stiff enough. Huh?
Stiff, I don't know. Mine's an F. Mine's an F, and it's a home build. It does have the factory made beams on it, but after trying to crush my bow and sink the metal point buoy, I do appreciate I think the rigidity that the wire does give. I mean, after I hit that and crush the front, crush the bow, frankly, there was absolutely no damage to the pockets and anything like that. And so, I mean, whether the wires were redundant still or not, I don't really have any proof. It makes me feel better. But,
yeah, I don't know. I think they're useful.
Yeah, and I think, frankly, removing the wire, I'd have to go to an 880 before, with the higher beams, before I would probably worry about it, because, frankly, like I said before on my boat, you go ahead and you power it up and you do get the beam slap, and it's probably the beam slap that is slowing you down more than the wire in the water, I would suppose. But
isn't there a wire for the front net? I know on the F9A, the diagonal wire was actually the wire that held up the front net. And I would think that all these boats have something similar, the 27 and the 28.
That mounts to the top of the beam, or the top of the float, though. That diagonal wire at the bow mounts to the top. The diagonal wires underneath that mount lower under.
On the 9A, it was Ian designed it so you only had one that went from the they both went from the front beam where it connected at the float. And the one came from the bow of the boat to the top. You're right. It's which I don't think makes much difference because that's just about where the beam comes in. And the other went from the beam to the back of the main hull. And that's what the 9A had. On the 32, he got rid of that and went with a double one on it, which actually I've had no problems with. I don't even know they're there.
Francois, is there a project you would love to do if someone just came and said, here's a bunch of money, make this for me? Would it be a foiler or something else?
Before we change topics, Greg Kay had a comment about the side loads and when sailing with the Screecher. Greg, are you still there? Greg Kay? Yeah. Okay. And also, just to keep up with the chat, Andrew was asking about the advantages and disadvantages of increasing the beam in trimarans.
Well, I guess the higher above the water you are, the less drag you will get. Then it's ergonomy, and also you on the folding trimarans, you need to remember that also plays a role of with the folding width. So you have to shape the beams that when it's folding, they are not protruding above the maximal width of for your trailer. Do you see what I mean? Because if they have too much curvature to be high above the water, they will be out of the 2.5 meter width. So that's also forcing you for the shape of the beam itself.
Okay, and Greg, do you want to talk about the Screecher and side loads? Tell you what, I'm going to read what you said. Screecher puts big side loads on the bow pole. These transfer via the pole stays, and some of this is trying to drag the floats forward. Need diagonals to stop this.
Because your pole stays are attached to your floats?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. It will add load. Have to calculate if it's more than the water itself. So once again, it's a question of stiffness. That's why I was saying theoretically, if the beams are, especially the beam joining with the floats is stiff enough, theoretically you don't need them. Theoretically, in practice, I'm sure they are useful for the boats who have one. So that's why we put them on the Corsair. It seems that they built the boat stiff enough, so they took them out. Yeah, always be careful. I don't have much to add, to be honest.
There are a lot of multi-hulls that have some big Herkin poles that obviously don't have the benefit of floats attached to. So I think it's just, comes down to whether or not you are engineering it for an unsupported pole or not.
Yeah, probably as well. Yeah.
Because I've got an F27. You certainly put lines up to the floats just to keep the bowsprit from moving side to side, right? So you hold it, you put those lines in, and then I guess I've got a compression strut sitting across the aft cabin just to try to keep the back of the boat from flexing a little bit from some of those loads. So that's kind of the solution or approach I've done for that.
So the design on the 880s, the bowsprit arm is actually it's a carbon fiber post, hollow post that fits inside of a cavity up in the forward bow. Actually, I have a photo of it right here. I could probably pop up in 1 second. And ultimately, it's the same carbon fiber that we use to make the davits on our Seawind 1600. So, and I believe on a combined weight, with 2 davits, it can hold 1,100 pounds, 1,200 pounds. So, yeah.
Yeah, and they did some testing as well, but it's not very long neither. If it was longer, You would need some support, especially you would have compression, so you have to be careful about that. But on the 880, it's not very long.
Well, the Sport has a longer one, which does require and comes with a bobstay.
Yeah, just bobstay.
Oh, the 880 doesn't have a bobstay. Oh, that's interesting.
The standard boat has a shorter bowsprit, which does not require a bobstay.
Does the tall rig version have a longer pole?
Yes, significantly longer.
Has anybody? I'm so curious. Have you sailed, Ira, the tall rig boat?
No, I have not.
Vince, you got to get on one.
I'm so curious.
Ira, I didn't even recognize you with that beard.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm staying at home, not going anywhere, and I got lazy and stopped shaving.
It looks good, man. It's real good.
Okay, let's back up to David's question. He asked something that sounded pretty fun. What was that again, David?
I was actually asking Francois what sort of dream project would he love to do? Is there some kind of design challenge he'd like to take on, maybe a foiler or something else?
To be honest, I really don't know. The next project is always the best one. We are working on very different projects. They all are very interesting in their own. We are doing a foiler actually, but electric foiler. We are doing this massive 21-meter one-off. I'm finishing my little Trimaran. So yeah, very different. We just had a guy that wanted 40, 45 footer. He said, just do whatever you want. I want a fast boat. Okay.
Yeah, did you ask how much he wanted to spend? Did you ask how much he wanted to spend?
Yeah, I checked that he had the budget first. But he had an idea of what it's gonna cost, but now he knew. To be honest, I really don't know.
A related question to cost, can you build a production boat in the United States or in France, or do you have to go to Vietnam to be able to hit the point that they're affordable?
I think it depends on the size probably, because the bigger, the more expensive, the easier it will be. But I'm pretty sure it's possible. Huh? The French builders are still building a lot of cats. Not the most interesting one, but they build a lot of them. However, they have a lot of financial help from our wonderful government, so that probably helps. In France, if you want to create a shipyard, basically the state gives you land. So even if you go bankrupt, you're the owner of the land after that. So pretty good.
Whoa!
Wow, that is yeah. Sign me up for that deal.
Yeah. Our state is running a frenzy of distributing money at the moment. So that will help, but else, to be honest, I don't know. It's always the same question, labor rate versus productivity. They do seem to build the boat faster here than they do in Vietnam. So how long will it be sustainable to be in Vietnam as well? If you don't drop if the labor rate increase because of the economy and productivity doesn't follow as fast, I don't know. I don't know, to be honest, it's a really some shipyards are still surviving in France. We are still building a lot of boats. Is it because we are a good boat builder, or is it because we get a lot of subventions? I don't know.
A related question, we're seeing here the sailors are getting older. You look around on your screen here. There's a lot of people with gray hair and gray beards I see, and so participation in racing, for instance, is down, from 20 years ago, a lot. And there's always this question of, is it a growing or a contracting sport? It seems like it's contracting in the US. How is that looking in France?
No, in France, a lot of people are sailing, especially in Brittany. It's really fantastic because when you're there on the water, you see more sailing boats than power boats. It's very active, and people through schools and so on, young people sail. Of course, it's something that it's easier to get into sailing if your family has a sailing boat or is already a sailing family. But in France, on the seaside, it's quite active, I think.
Cool.
Me, with my friends, we even rent boat to go do some cruising with friends. But once again, if you're not into sailing and so on, you will not do that at the first idea to go on holidays. But then to own a boat, it's a different matter because I don't know in the US, but I think in France, overall, in average, people have less money and less buying power than my parents' generation, for example. So for sure, it's not helping to have boats. We have another problem is our harbor are full with boat that doesn't move. So people, they want to buy a boat, but they don't have a space to put it. So that's a problem as well. And I don't know, I think also there is always new trends and new, like, maybe we're gonna see more amateur boat builders now that the people have less money, and also there is a kind of a renewal of craftsmanship and stuff like this. So maybe there will be more people building boats. I don't know. Me, all I can do is give you the cutting file of the Conca, and that's a cheap boat for young people. But what's cheaper, because the Conca, if you pay all the hours of the carpenter, it's around 20,000 euro. If you take the good sales, the carbon mast, etc. So 20,000 euro, it's a car basically. So I don't know if all my friends, they will decide to invest in such a boat.
It's interesting you said cost of a car, because I think you know, when I was sailing international 14s, you know, there was all this discussion in the international 14s about, you know, how expensive the boats were, and, you know, like boats like running, you know, $30,000, $35,000, $40,000, and people were saying that was like super expensive. And the interesting thing was they went back and they talked to some of the old guys that were sailing, you know, UFA Fox versions and things like that. And you talk to them about, well, how much was a car then? Well, it's about the same price as the boat. I mean, so, you know, there's that size that you're talking about in the Trimaran that you have there. I really think, you know, over, you know, this long period of time, you know, those boats like that have always been around that cost. So it's interesting. I think cars are getting more expensive too, you know, so, but I think it's always been kind of a sacrifice like that. You know, you're going to get a fancy car, you're going to get a
and we are talking about brand new boats and so on. I have friends, they went sailing for a year and they spent, I don't know, 30,000 euro for an old boat, 3 friends, 10 grand each. It's not so much. And they went sailing for.
Or people can get a used Hobie Cat in a trailer for 2,000 to 5,000, and there's a very active Hobie Cat fleet in the region with a lot of regattas.
Yeah, I know plenty of people. They are giving away boats because they don't do it and they don't have a place to store it or whatever, and they give away boats. But I prefer to sail on my own design. So.
I have a question about sailing in France on both the Mediterranean side and the north side where you are. Well, like, it would be fun to go and rent, you know, like a 880 or a catamaran, a cruising catamaran for a week or so. And but I haven't really experienced tying up to a dock with the bows in. Except for when I was sailing with my friends in Sweden on their boat, and kind of wondering, you know, the multi-hulls are wider, so how well does that work to cruise around? I mean, obviously you can anchor easily, but what about these docks with the bow in?
Well, I don't know. It's the same as going transom in, huh? I don't know. What's the question exactly?
Well, I mean, how hard is it to cruise around when you have a wide boat like a multi-hull? If you're in the Mediterranean or up in the north part of France, how hard is it to get dock space? Is it as easy as a monohull or much harder?
To be honest, I don't know. I guess it depends on the harbor. I know that some places in north of France, because of the tides, they have locks. So you will have to check that the locks are wide enough. But I think until 50 feet, it's not an issue. And then probably some places are more crowded than others, but I really have no idea.
Do most people in France with cats, do they moor them or do they tie them up to a dock? Because around here, it seems like, you know, the big problem is, or the challenge is finding, you know, dock space that's wide, you know, has a wide slip. There are a few of those.
Well, when you need a full-time harbor place, for sure, it's really hard to find. When you're just traveling around and stopping in marinas with the cats, oh, I'm not cruising enough in France, I guess.
Yeah, you need to take more time off, man, so you can go sailing.
That's right.
That's the problem, Vince. You know, like when I taught sailing, I suddenly found out that if I taught sailing, I'm not actually sailing. And I think, you know, working and designing boats probably has that same kind of thing.
No, I cannot complain. I sailed because I have my boat. But and then often the clients invite us. We always do the sea trials and so on. But not so many people stay in France. Huh? Most of them they go around the world.
So Jeff, back to your mooring question. I mean, certainly Mediterranean mooring takes up less space than side tying does for a boat, so they stack in more boats in the Mediterranean than we do here because we side tie and they do Mediterranean mooring.
Yeah, that's right. You would gain 50 centimeters every 2 boats.
I'm curious. It looks like, Francois, you had a couple of nice looking cruising catamarans. Is that what those are? And then my second question is, if you wanted to get a cruising catamaran, if you had a family of young children and you wanted to cruise maybe for a year or 6 months, which boat of the current boats would you like to have? I mean, you could have a gunboat, or maybe you could have Francois Perus 42, or what would you like to have?
Well, I did design something that was originally also for myself, or for my family, let's say, but we didn't build it in the end. Pandora 13.5.
You have a rendering of it?
Yeah, we had a cool cockpit. Was it? The hulls actually became the hulls of the VCAT. That is here.
And that's 44.
Yeah. So, but the idea of this boat, I wanted to retain a cockpit like on the Pandora 8.5, where we are sitting with the tiller a little bit like a monohull. So I don't know if the image is good enough, but you can see the cockpit has 2 levels, let's say.
Oh.
And the sailing level is at the same level as the sitting. Mm-hmm. If you stand, you can see above the roof with the tiller in hand, or you can you can sit and look through the glass. Mm-hmm. And the winch you can see here is on a return from the aft beam. So basically, when you are sitting here, you have all your controls at your hand, and the tiller. So
nice. So the aft winch, that's for the main sheet or traveler?
Both.
Okay. And then, so this is what, 13 meters?
13.5, yeah.
13.5, so nice length. And then galley up, galley down?
We could do both, but the original one was with galley up.
Yeah. And boards, or dag boards?
Yeah, boards.
Yeah.
But as an option as well. I think for my own boat, I don't know if I would put dag boards.
Really?
What is your thinking? Why?
This boat has mini keels.
And
I point as good as a monohull cruiser.
Yeah, there was an Outremer that was designed with keels, and that was, I've seen discussions where that boat sailed as well as the one with the normal ones with dagger boards. So
I think the dagger boards will be better in terms of performance. It can also be better in terms of safety. So it's a good, it's an important point.
Mm-hmm.
You can take them out. But in terms of performance, if your mini kills are good, are well designed, and if this is the only bad part of the boat, doesn't matter. Huh? The lagoon are not bad sailing boats because they have mini kills. It's because of the whole thing.
So if I get over to France, can I get a ride on Pandora?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, anyone.
My wife is a Francophile, and we have a canal boat in the canals there. So.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. It's now in the city of Corre, C-O-R-R-E, Corre.
Yeah, I see what you. Okay, yeah. That's not so far.
So we'll drop by Brittany and say hello to you.
You know, sure. And this boat is this weekender was designed as a day boat, and because where I sail right now we are in open sea, but inside where I have the house we are in a gulf with a lot of shallow water. And my uncle he likes to sail alone, and he told me I prefer to know I have 1.1 meter draft, and I don't get bothered with it because he's alone. And at the beginning I was really against it, but I accepted to listen to his experience. And in the end, yes, I think we are losing in the top surf. I think with this boat, we should be able to hit 25 knots, and we never succeeded with the mini kills. We are stuck at about 21, 22, and it's really, you really have to push hard. But until 18, 19 knots, you just go very easily to 18, 19 knots. And the boat is super well balanced. When you sail alone, you can just drop the tiller and change your sails, go in the hull, whatever. So yes, we lose a little bit of top speed, but for the rest, it's very comfortable. And now after this was the fifth season, I think, we just put new sails, North sails 3DI, and we gain again because we are saving all the routes when we sail, so we can see the improvement over the years with the amelioration first that we did on the boat, and now in our way of sailing, and now with the new sails. And every year we've been gaining an approximately one knots average. And now with this boat, my uncle, he goes alone in the morning. He does more than 100 miles in a day, go around the islands off the coast and come back for the aperitif. So the boat is super easy, and yeah.
Child day sail, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think last season he did 1,750 nautic miles in 2 months or 1.5 months.
Wow.
Well, he sails every day. He's totally crazy, but the boat is fast. Yeah, it's super fast. That's fun. When we have the thermical wind in summer, there is about 15 knots of wind and gusting at 18 on the biggest day, and we just come back blasting at a steady above 15 knots.
Nice.
Coming back faster than with the chop, we go faster than the power boats. So it's really, really fun.
Is this in the Gulf de Morbihan? I don't know how you say that, but you said you lived on a bay or a
yeah, I live on an island, one of the islands of the Gulf.
Is it the Gulf de Morbihan?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
You mentioned your uncle and single handling, and I just wanted to say that one of the other things I like about the new 880 is that it has a self-tacking jib, which I think is a big plus.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, sometimes, yeah, you would like to have a more covering foresail, but most of the time, this boat, they create so much wind, you're always upwind, and those small jib, they work really well. if you have a good flat cut zero with that, you cover everything. That's why the pole is not so long as well, because we did the boat's not really optimized to do a lot of big downwind. It tends to build so much wind. We prioritize the flatter sail and a different way of sailing than going full downwind with a Spinnaker.
Francois, did you already tell us about the sail plan on the 880? Did you tell us, you know, whether it has a screecher or a spinnaker or any of that? I don't remember whether you got into that. Because I was busy like trying to read the chat and things like that, so I may have missed if you did that.
We didn't talk about it. Yeah, we can talk about it. I think Scott knows even better than me the sales option. There is a self-tacker, and then there is a couple of foresails, plus or minus flatter. Scott, do you know exactly, or?
I think Scott might be out of here.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Oh, there he is.
I also added a link into our chats. I responded to somebody. There's a www.corsairmarine.com/options/Corsair 880. Now, if you visit that, you will actually be able to see all the options that are available, including the sail inventory. Now, the vessel can be equipped with a continuous line furling screecher. And then, of course, we have the asymmetrical, the MPS spinnaker, and then the jib and the mainsail. And there's several different packages we have available, going all the way down to a base package to the most premium sail material that we have available. So the boat is rather a la carte with a lot of different options, everything from the helm seats to upgraded winches to pull out small refrigerators, even hot water is an option on the 880. So really, by all means, take a look at that. It's in the chat form. It was, I don't know exactly how to tail it, but here, I'll just copy it and send it again. And yeah, this is a private site that we only share with people who we've already qualified. But for everybody who's on this meeting, I think that certainly qualifies. So go ahead and take a look at it.
Yeah, and so for the sails, I know there is a flat cut zero, and then you have the Jenaker on the picture to be able to go more downwind. I think that's about it. We try to keep it simple.
You know, something I'm still just tremendously impressed with what you did here, Francois, is you took a 32-foot boat and you made it fit somehow into a 28-foot package. I mean, the space inside. The space inside the vessel is incredible. It's bigger. It actually feels bigger inside this boat, in the cockpit and in the interior than the 32 does.
I can, you know, Scott, I think is right on. I mean, it's really quite amazing to be in it physically.
Yeah. And then it's safer. It's got these massive, and it looks better too. Somehow you can do all of that and make it look better. It was really an impressive achievement.
Thanks, Scott. Well, and did you sail? Did you sail her, Scott?
Did I do what?
Did you sail her?
Did I? Briefly, I had to leave and sail another boat rather quickly. So we brought David Wilhite from San Francisco to do some of the initial shakedowns. But I briefly sailed on the boat after I put it together.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't a very windy day that day. So it was just, but it still got up and moved. We were matching wind speed. So it's fast.
Diane, we should probably not keep Francois from his family and dinner forever. Yeah. I mean, I suppose this is a, you know, at some point we ought to let him go.
Yeah. I'm alone in my flat in Paris. The bars are closed. The restaurants are closed. The theater are closed.
Well, if that's the case, if I can squeak in one more question. I did see on the chats that some people had brought this up. And it's more of a generic multi-hull design question. And it has to do with, the length, the width kind of aspect of catamarans and trimarans. And I know that, looking at older trimarans, and I'll start out with the trimaran part, but, older trimarans, there were all kinds of crazy things initially. You'd see the long center hull and two short floats mounted way forward, or, you would see, and then it seemed like everybody went back to, long center hull and shorter floats. I mean, is there some kind of design theory that has anything to do with like length of width on a multi-hull trimaran?
Well, I think that for any of the groups that you could divide a design into, everything is, there is never one answer, because everything is linked with all the other parameters. So there might be, for a particular boat, a good reason to choose one or the other. For this kind of boat, let's say the first thinking is just that you sail on two hulls basically. So why would you make one shorter than the other one? I mean, I guess at the beginning of trimarans, the float was more help, and you carry more sails. You don't have the keel. But they were not, into such this philosophy of we are sailing on the float now, so the float needs to be optimized like the main hull. Why make a nice main hull and do a canoe for your float when you're gonna spend so much time on it? So that's why we do our three hulls the same on this boat. But again, for example, if the design is not well done, your boat will have problem to tack. But that's not just the hull shape, it's only one parameter. Other aspect of the boat will impact the way it tack. The sail, the plan, the appendages, location, etc. So I don't know if I'm answering to the question at all, but
that's great. That's you can keep going.
It's interesting. Thinking back. Remember Ellen MacArthur's boat that Nigel Irons designed? Had a really long nose. And it seems to me that Sodebo at one point had a really long nose trimaran.
Relatively to the position of their forte.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they are trying to, this is to fight pitch pulling. So it's also the same, a bit the same idea of those reverse bow and this extra length at the front. So that's what you can see on a lot of those racing boats. It's because they go very, very fast. So the pitch moment induced by the sails is even greater. So the more volume you put forward, far away, the more you will fight against this pitching moment induced by the sails. So you try to put extra lengths, which can create other problem though. At the moment, I saw that they cut away the bow of spindrift to shorten it.
Really? Huh.
It was moving too much and it was inducing vibration.
Huh.
So they shortened it, but they kept the float at the same length. So now this boat has a shorter main hull.
Well, that's one thing of curiosity for me, because obviously, I mean, it seems like uphill design and downhill design is completely different, because when you're going downwind, it seems like you would want as much flotation forward and out as you possibly could. You're going upwind, maybe that's not so important.
It depends. So, I mean, those boats also, they have narrow hulls, so you're not exactly in the same kind of wave regimes as the monohulls, but when you're going upwind, you want some length anyway. When you're going downwind, if you lift your bows, you don't need so much length, but you want to carry your weight at the back. You can see on the 760 the difference between the old float and the new floats, and the old boat, from what Zam told us from the factory. It was sometimes a bit on the ass. By correcting the volume at the back of the float, we kept the boat with a more constant trim. So constant trim and less pitching, it's also better for accelerating. And also this boat, they create so much wind, so much apparent wind, the downwind condition doesn't exist so much anymore. So Yeah.
What about, you know, this has always been the thing with the large amount of rocker that the traditional farriers had, and the fine aft, you know, the relatively narrow float sterns. As you go faster and faster upwind, you know, you're going 10 knots upwind, the transom really goes down. It really trims down, and you know, just bow up trim. Mm-hmm. What if you put on a T-foil on your rudder to sort of both resist pitching and then also potentially trim the boat down? I know a T-foil would be a pain in the ass to deal with in terms of, you know, weed and removing it and all the rest. But do you see any value in T-foils on these boats?
Yeah, T-foil is the, if you really want to complexify your boat, T-foil is, no, but I mean, in the level of complexification, before putting foils, I would put T-foil for sure on the rudder.
Yeah.
For example, having curved daggerboard without having T-foil is an heresy. Heresy, it exists in English.
Right.
I love the T. Oh, sorry.
Counterproductive. So the T-foil are what stabilize your pitching. So this is really good. But if you put curved daggerboard and they are two-way forward, they're gonna amplify the dolphin effect, because it's so much forward that if your boat dive in, the angle of the boards will make it dive even more.
Yeah.
So it's really, really bad. It's just a marketing thing, you know. But if you really want to fly, first, if you want to control your pitch, T-rudder, and then if you want to fly, T-rudder are necessary as well. Or you have an unstable boat like they do with the IMOCA, and it's a pain.
Yeah, the T-foil from a practical cruising standpoint, I could never figure out, you know, if you got weed on a T-foil, what do? You got to, I mean, there's no way to get it off.
Are whether they are sliding or they are rotating, so you can play with that. But yeah, it's definitely more fragile. It's often deeper. You need to be able to lift them, so it's more costly because you need to have some one-off bearings, one-off cases, etc.
At one point, I asked Paul Beeger to, you know, whether you could have a T-foil on this boat, and he sent me a design that he used on the I-14s for a T-foil that is controllable from the tiller, so you can adjust the pitch of the T-foil by turning the tiller, a knob on the tiller. That was quite remarkably complex.
You twist. It's not that complex. You just twist it's the hiking stick. I actually built a home built version on our 14.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's not hard to do because the complex mechanics are all in the rudder itself. Mm. But I can't imagine the loads on a T-foil rudder for a farrier, and I can't imagine that you would be able to put a T-foil on a stock farrier without having to really beef up, you know, the gudgeon connection. I mean, the loads.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's only one part of the boat, but you're gonna increase your righting moment. So I don't know. I think it was 2 years ago. I met with Morelli in Amsterdam, and it was just the moment they did the TF35, and the first boat broke its mast because I think he told me that the increase of righting moment because of the foils was bigger than was expected, or something like this. Because when you have the T-rudder, that's what they do on those new foiling catamarans in Switzerland. They trim the T-rudder opposite on each hull. So the one that is downwind is catching the water, and the one that's downwind is lifting the boat. So you keep your boat as flat as possible. So both of them have a positive action on the righting moment. So your righting moment just goes up like crazy. So you will need to reinforce your beams, everything.
Huh. You know, I wondered about T-foils on a trimaran because it seems like as trimaran heels a lot more, so there would be forces acting on the T-foil that would make the steering potentially a little bit odd, I would think, as the boat heels.
No, probably, yeah. You have to, but those foiling boats, it's not the same. Huh? When you are steering that, it's very sensitive. It's a different way of steering than when you are in the water.
Have you thought at all about the benefits of canting the rigs, on any of your boats?
I never studied it, to be honest. And I saw that in the racing, they've been stopping to do that for a while now. So, especially with their boat staying flat now with the foils.
Right.
I never looked at it. Yeah.
About 20 minutes ago, Ira typed a question in chat. He was asking, what did he say the hulls were repurposed to? Which hulls were you talking about, Ira? I know Francois was showing several interesting boats.
It was his 13.5 meter catamaran. And he said that the hulls got repurposed to something, and I missed it.
Yeah, to do this boat. This is the same hull that I designed for my 13.5, but then the deck and the cabin top were different, more classical way with the helm station on the cabin bulkhead. And this boat was built for an American couple from Seattle, actually. And they are now in Montenegro, I think. Yeah, Seattle.
Thank you.
Who are they?
I think they have a blog. They are called Blue Saga. Yeah, it's the right thing there, actually.
Wow, that's a lot of boat.
Oh, so when you're cruising up in Brittany, it sounds like the tides are very extreme there. How many meters do they fluctuate during, let's say, the full moon?
Well, it depends where in Brittany, actually. Where I am, it's quite reasonable. It's only 3 to 4 meter maximum. So that would be 12 feet, 14 feet. But in the North Brittany, close to Normandy, then they can have up to 12 meter. So 40 feet tides.
No wonder they have locks in some of those harbors. Wow.
They have a lot of oysters and stuff like this.
Interesting. Huh. Oh, Andrew's found the website for that Blue Saga catamaran. Thanks.
This is the foiler stuff we do. Electric. And,
I watched the YouTube video for your jet ski design, the foiling jet ski. That was really great to see.
It was a little bit stable.
$10,000? Yeah.
Sorry? It's totally controlled by electronics. So when I tried it the first time, it was a bit strange because when I was moving on the boat, it was not changing the trim at all because it's very reactive. So as me, I'm a sailor, I'm a surfer, so I was expecting, something to happen when I move on the boat, but nothing happened. It was super stable. And I think now they are happy with all their software thing, and it's working quite well. So it's funny.
I think we might have to pick one up. This could end up being a lot of fun.
That'd make a great dinghy.
Yeah. How do you go to shore?
How do you go to shore?
All the bars I go to have docks. I don't know what you're talking about.
Why would you ask such a terrible question? Never go to shore. So, hey, I'm really sorry to do this too. I do need to sign off. We have an afternoon movie of a vessel, a catamaran. So you guys, I'm sorry, but I got to sign off now.
Thanks for joining, Scott.
Yeah, thank you. All right. As well, be back in touch later. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, sure. Cheers.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, well, Francois, we sure appreciate you spending time with us. And if you ever want to drop into another meeting, you're always welcome, and you can invite anyone you want.
Okay, sure. Yeah, why not? We can do another one when I finish my wooden Trimaran.
We'd love to see that. Yeah, and it's been a great presentation.
Yeah,
yes. I really appreciate you showing up. Yeah.
Thank you much.
Thank you
a lot for your interest and for inviting me. I hope you understood what I said, and it was interesting. It's always nice to share with fellow enthusiastic of multi-hulls. If you pass by France, don't hesitate to let me know.
We'll take you up on that for sure.
Cool, no problem. And I do the same. If I'm in Seattle, be careful.
Oh yeah. Okay, great. Bye-bye.
All right, have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good to see all of you.